It was one of those rare Saturdays that I had nothing going on. The kind of day where your phone stays face up and sad, and every app you open is just the same 5 people posting the same recycled bullshit. I wasn't an outdoors woman. I was the doom scroll on the couch until my back hurt type, but the heat was pressing against the windows like it wanted in, and the thought of another 10 hours inside my apartment made my skin itch. So I went on a hike. I say hike, but what I had in mind was just a walk through the woods at the edge of town. There's this little trailhead I'd driven past 100 times, with the faded sign and the little gravel shoulder where maybe 3 cars can squeeze in. I always told myself I'd stop there one day when my life slowed down. Apparently, no social plans and no news shows to binge counted as my life slowing down. I threw some stuff into my backpack: water bottle, granola bar, cheap bug spray that smelled like melted plastic, my old bikini crumpled up from last summer. Habit more than intention. I wasn't planning on swimming in anything. I locked my apartment, walked down the sticky stairwell, and when I got into my car, there was that little flicker of, hey, maybe I'm one of those people who does things on weekends now, in my chest. The drive out of town took maybe 15 minutes. We're not a big town. Once you pass the strip mall with the broken sign for Rhine Corp's local office and the closed-down diner, it's all trees and telephone poles and that big beige warehouse they never finished. I pulled off at the trailhead and killed the engine. The silence hit harder than I expected. No hum of someone else's AC, no neighbor's TV. Just summer air pushing in as soon as I cracked the door open, warm, a little humid, carrying the dry smell of sun-baked dirt. I slung the backpack on, locked the car, and walked toward the tree line. The change was instant. One step you're standing in harsh white sun. The next, you're swallowed by the green. The shade was cooler. Not cold, but the kind of cool that lives under leaves and carries the smell of sap and wet bark. The world got muffled. My footsteps on the packed path and the hush-rush of wind in the leaves were the only sounds. I hadn't realized how loud my apartment was, how loud my head was, until it wasn't. I followed the trail. It wasn't anything intense, a dirt track, roots crossing like veins, the occasional half-hearted incline that made me breathe a little harder. To my left, I could glimpse the highway through gaps in the trees sometimes, just enough to know it was there. To my right, nothing but trunks and undergrowth and shadows. There's a kind of relief in being somewhere your phone suddenly doesn't feel relevant. I checked it once, saw 0 new notifications, and shoved it deep into the backpack. For a few minutes, I just walked, counting breaths. In, out, in, out. I started to think maybe this was who I could be now. Someone who bought hiking boots and used them enough that they looked dirty on purpose. Someone who said shit like, I'm spending the weekend on the trails. The path bent right and started drifting downhill. The air cooled another few degrees. I smelled water before I saw it. This faint, earthy whetstone smell under the leaf rot and warm pine. Then the trees opened up and there it was. A lake. Perfectly still. Perfectly wrong. It wasn't big. Maybe the size of a football field. Maybe a little more oval-shaped with rocky edges. The surface was smooth enough to be glass, except for the tiny ripples where insects touched it. It didn't look like any man-made reservoir. The shoreline was irregular and cluttered with fallen branches and reeds. No dock, no sign, no trash even. Like no one had been here in years. But it glinted, that's what hit me. The water actually glinted, sunlight catching on it like it was sprinkled with glitter, silver and blue, and something else, something just a little too bright for murky pond water. I stood there, breathing, feeling sweat gather in my hairline, imagining the cold shock of that glassy surface closing over me. I'm not an impulsive person. I make pro/con lists for frozen pizza brands. But boredom and heat and the weirdness of actually following through on leaving my apartment must have rewired something in me, because the thought came fast and stupid. You should swim. Immediately, another thought followed. You should not swim. God knows what's in that water. Bacteria, leeches, broken glass, drug needles from teenagers partying in the woods. But There was nothing. No beer cans, no bonfire rings, no graffiti carved into the trees. The place felt untouched. The surface didn't even have that green slime you see on neglected ponds. I walked down to the edge. The dirt gave way to a narrow strip of smooth stones, rounded and cool. I slipped off my sneakers and nudged one into the shallows. The water was cold, not freezing, but cool enough that my skin tightened and my toes tingled. It felt clean. Too clean, maybe. I remember looking around one last time. There were no other cars at the trailhead. No yagos. No voices. Just trees and that glittering water and my own heartbeat in my ears. Well, screw it, I muttered to myself. I stripped down. Shirt off, shorts off, underwear off. For some reason, the idea of putting the bikini on felt sillier than just being naked. At least naked had some kind of primal logic to it. Clothes, folded in a neat little pile on a nearby log. My backpack on top. If someone came by, I told myself I'd just deal with it. They'd get a story, I'd get embarrassment, and maybe a fine if this counted as public indecency, and life would go on. Probably. I stepped forward until the water reached my ankles, then my shins, then my thighs. Each inch up my legs felt like stepping into a new temperature, shock rolling up my skin in prickles. By the time it hit my hips, my breath punched out of me in this involuntary gasp. Fuck, that's cold. I whispered, and then I went all in. Idove. The lake swallowed the sound of everything. Silence under the water is a different species than silence in the air. It presses in on your ears. It has weight. The cold smacked in my chest, my ribs, my face. My eyes stung for a second, then adjusted. The water wasn't completely clear, but it wasn't murky either. Little motes of something drifted around me. Dust, or algae, or whatever lakes are full of, but they sparkled when the sun cut through. Not like dust usually does. Brighter, sharper. I pushed up and broke the surface with a gasp, hair plastered to my face. The sun felt like another element entirely now, like a second lake made of warmth and glare hanging overhead. For maybe 20 minutes, I just swam, back and forth, lazily. I floated on my back, watching slivers of sky between overlapping leaves. I dove down until the pressure nudged at my eardrums and my fingers brushed something soft and slimy near the bottom. I kicked away from that fast on instinct. Every now and then, a shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with temperature. Not fear exactly, more like awareness. You know that feeling when you're sure someone's watching you, but you turn and no one's there? It was like that, but broader. Like the water itself had eyes. Ridiculous. I told myself I was being dramatic because I never did things like this. Like some part of my brain was staging an intervention. Eventually, though, I started thinking about the walk back in wet skin, about my clothes just sitting there on the log like bait for some raccoon with a taste for cotton, about the fact that the sun was inching lower and I had no idea how long this trail actually was in total. Okay, I told myself. You were wild. You swam. Congratulations. I paddled back to shore, the rocks under my feet slimy and a little sharp. I climbed out, goosebumps blooming over my arms and legs as the air hit me. The sun felt hotter now, almost greedy, leaching water from my skin faster than I could process. I stood there for a second, naked, dripping, looking out at the lake. If someone had told me I'd think about this place every day after that, I would have laughed. It was just a lake. Just a stupid, unmarked lake in our dumb, boring town. I got dressed, packing the wet bikini into a plastic grocery bag and shoving it in the bottom of my backpack. I took one last look at the water. It glinted back at me like an eye catching the sun. Then I left. The rest of the hike was unremarkable. Dirt, trees, some birds. My soaked hair left damp spots on the back of my shirt. My legs felt pleasantly heavy, that good kind of tired. By the time I got back to the car, I felt proud. I know how lame that sounds. But when you've spent as much time being sedentary as I have, one little walk and one impulsive swim starts to feel like a personality shift. On the drive home, my skin felt tight and flush from the sun. There's this satisfaction in physical exhaustion that mental exhaustion never gives you. You can't doom scroll your way into the feeling of your muscles vibrating quietly under your skin. I noticed a rash at a red light. At first, I thought my seatbelt was digging in weird. There was this little sting on my left thigh, high enough that the shorts covered it when I was sitting. I reached down, fingers brushing something raised and hotter than the rest of my skin. When the light turned green, I drove one-handed and tugged my shorts up with the other, just enough to peek. It was a red spot, about the size of a quarter. Round, like someone had pressed a hot bottle cap against me and then pulled it away. The center was darker, like a tiny bruise trying to form. The skin around it was a little swollen. Great, I muttered. Fucking bug bite. I called it that in my head and out loud, because calling it anything else made it feel bigger. I told myself it was a spider or a tick or some mutant lake mosquito. Not itchy, not really. Just there. By the time I got home, I'd almost forgotten about it. I showered long, hot, my skin still humming from the sun and the strain. I scrubbed harder than I usually did, thinking vaguely about lake scum and fish pee and whatever else was in there. The rash stung under the spray, but it was manageable. I made dinner. I collapsed on the couch. I posted one blurry photo of the trees with some caption like, "Maybe I'm outdoorsy now," and got a few pity likes. When I went to bed, I noticed a rash again. It looked angrier, a little bigger. I told myself it was my imagination, turned off the light, and went to sleep. The next morning, there was no pretending. I woke up with that weird awareness of my own body. You know when you have a sunburn or sore muscles, and you start feeling your skin before you're fully awake? It was like that, but localized. Left thigh, upper enough to be awkward. I kicked off the sheets and pulled my shorts up. The red mark had grown. What had been the size of a quarter was now closer to a golf ball. The edges were more defined, the color darker toward the center. The swelling had gone from mild irritation to "what the hell is that?" I poked it. It was warmer than the rest of my skin, firm but not hard. I half expected it to itch, but it didn't. No pain either, just this awareness. Like there was something occupying that square of flesh that didn't belong to me. I got this stupid cold sensation in my chest. Panic came up and then dropped back down like a wave leaving foam. It's fine, I told myself. If it's not better in a day or two, I'll go to urgent care. They'll give me a cream. It'll be embarrassing, but whatever. I covered it up with my shorts and tried to move on with my day. Except my hand kept going back to it. I'd be making coffee and my fingers would ghost over my thigh, feel the raised heat through the fabric. I'd be scrolling my phone and my nails would be tracing the outline of the swelling. I wasn't even making a conscious decision to do it. My body just kept checking. By the end of the day, I'd lifted my shorts to look at it at least 10 times. Each time, I was sure it had grown a millimeter or two. Each time, I convinced myself I was being dramatic. 2 days later, there was no drama about it. Just fact. The rash was now almost the size of a baseball. A big, angry red disc, swollen and swollen some more. The center had this faint, darker shadow under the skin, something almost bruise color that seemed to move when I stared at it too long. Still no itching, still no pain, just this throbbing awareness, like a second pulse. I went to work that Monday. I wore the loosest jeans I owned, and I still felt them rubbing against the swelling. In the middle of a meeting, sitting under fluorescent lights while my boss droned about quarterly targets, I felt something shift. It was the smallest movement, a tiny slide like someone dragged a finger along the inside of my thigh from the inside out. I flinched so hard my coworker glanced over at me. "Fine," I whispered when she raised her eyebrows. I wasn't fine. By lunch, that little shift had turned into more. Not constant, but regular. Every 20 minutes or so, something inside that red circle would roll or twist, making the skin briefly stretch tighter. Not dramatically, just enough that I could feel it, like something was getting comfortable. That was the first day I had thought the words, "There is something alive in there." I didn't say it out loud. Saying it out loud felt like it would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. By Thursday night, the rational part of my brain lost the battle. The thing, yeah, I was calling a thing now, moved so often that I could barely focus on anything else. Sometimes I'd catch sight of a darker shape drifting under the skin, like a shadow in shallow water. It was black, or so deep purple it looked black, and it was long. If I pressed around the swelling gently, I could feel sections, not one round lump, but something coiled wrapping around something in my leg. Whenever I pressed too hard, it would twitch away. I stood in my bathroom that night, sweaty and pale, staring at my own thigh in the mirror. The overhead light buzzed softly. The rest of the apartment was quiet. I pressed my palm flat on the swelling. It was hot, hotter than the rest of my leg. I imagined taking a knife from the kitchen, sterilizing it over the stove, and slicing a line through the center of that redness. Imagine pushing my fingers in, grabbing whatever was inside and yanking. I picture the spray of blood, the pain, the hospital, the doctor's face when I explained. I pictured the things slipping away from my grasp, slithering deeper. I dropped my hand and almost gagged in the sink. The next morning, I tried to look up weird rash with movement, parasite under skin, lake parasite thigh swelling not itchy, and a dozen other combinations on my phone. What I got was a black hole of WebMD level horror. Everything from harmless cysts to an array of parasites with microscope pictures I regretted seeing. None of the images looked like what I had. None of them mentioned a feeling like it was wrapping around something important. I could feel that now. When I walked, there was this tug deep in my leg like something was anchored around the muscle or the veins, using them for support. By Friday afternoon, I couldn't pretend anymore. I called my doctor's office. The receptionist put me on hold, then came back and said there'd been a cancellation. I could come in at 3:30. Dr. Rodney had been my doctor since I moved to town. He was one of those guys you picture when someone says family doctor, soft around the middle, gray hair creeping back from his forehead, laugh lines around his eyes. He always asked about my job and remembered my parents' names even though they'd never met him. I expected him to chuckle in my panic, maybe make a joke about bugs having a taste for city girls going into the woods. He did not chuckle. He walked into the exam room with his tablet, glanced at the note the nurse had written, rash on thigh, noticed 5 days ago, no pain, movement, and gave me his usual friendly smile. All right, Riley, let's take a look at this rash that's giving you so much grief. I nodded, suddenly unsure how to act. How do you present your leg to someone when you're convinced there's a living thing inside it? I tucked my jeans down to mid-thigh on the left. The paper crinkled under me as I shifted on the exam table. The smile slid off his face like someone had pulled a plug. He leaned in, peering without touching it first. The red area was angry now, glossy. The darker shape inside was more distinct, a sinuous mass that faded when it stayed still. He said, which is not what you want your doctor to say with that tone. My heart rate spiked. Is it like an infected bite? I tried because I needed him to say yes, absolutely, a bit of antibiotic, and you'll be fine. He didn't answer me. He straightened up instead. Let me check something, he said, just to be sure. He walked out of the room without his usual little reassuring pat on my arm. My leg felt suddenly exposed, stupidly naked with a rash just there. I couldn't help staring at it, as if it knew it was being observed. The dark shape inside did a slow, languid shift. I swallowed hard. When he came back, he was carrying something that looked like a cross between a magnifying glass and a scanner gun from a grocery store. There was no glass in the ring, just a circular opening with a thin rim of metal and a small round screen built into the handle. He didn't explain it. He just powered it on. There was a soft hum and held it over my leg. Not touching, just hovering a few centimeters above my skin. The device emitted a faint shifting glow I could barely see, and numbers flickered on the tiny screen. He moved it slowly in a spiral over the red area, his mouth pressed into a line. That's when he said the word. Not even to me. It sounded like it fell out of him. Corrid, he murmured. What? I asked, voice thin. I'd heard him. I just needed context. He froze for a beat, then pulled his gaze from my leg to my face. All his usual softness was gone. Not cruel, just stripped. Professional in the way of someone who's carefully thinking about which words not to say. Riley, he said. Have you been swimming in Gem Lake recently? I blinked. Gem Lake. The name meant nothing. It's an unofficial name, he said quickly, almost dismissively. Little lake out by the woods, near the old Rheinkorb site. My throat closed for a second. I went swimming in a lake last week. No sign, just water. I didn't know what it was called. He breathed out through his nose, something between a sigh and a curse. Rheinkorb really needs to do something about that mess, he muttered, more to himself than me. He rubbed his forehead with the heel of his hand for a second, then looked at me again. What you have is a parasitic organism colloquially called a chorid. I stared at him. I have a parasite. He hesitated, which told me that he'd wanted to spin it gentler, that he decided not to. Yes, he said, you do. My brain did that thing where it tries to reboot and just shows the loading symbol. Like a worm? In my leg. He glanced down at the swelling. As if on cue, the shadow moved. My skin crawled. It's a little more complex than a typical worm, he said. But that's the general idea. It's an aquatic organism that seeks a mammalian host to complete a stage of its life cycle. Unfortunately, you provided it an opportunity. I laughed. It came out sharp and wrong. Unfortunately, I went for one fucking swim. His expression tightened briefly. The good news. There's good news. Is that it's predictable, he finished, like he hadn't heard me. We know what it does. We know its timeline, and we have protocols. The bad news is we can't simply cut it out. Why not? The word came out more desperate than I intended. You're a doctor. There's a thing in my leg. Take it out. He set the scanner down gently on the counter and pulled a rolling stool closer, lowering himself so we were more eye level. That small gesture almost made it worse. Chorids don't burrow randomly, he said. They're selective. They wrap themselves around specific structures, veins, arteries, sometimes nerves. They're like vines around a trellis. If we cut him before it's ready to emerge on its own, we risk severing whatever it's wrapped around. Best case, you lose function in that leg. Worst case, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. My breath got shallow. So I just live with it. I'm a goddamn Airbnb for this thing until it decides to leave. His mouth twitched like he wanted to shush me, but couldn't argue with the metaphor. Temporarily, yes. The cord will detach when it's completed its growth phase. We want to control how and where that happens. If we follow protocols, the risk to you is minimized. Minimized is not zero. It is not zero, he agreed. I stared at him because words had just stopped firing in my head. There was a long stretch where all I could hear was the clock on the wall and the faint hum of the air conditioning. He must have seen something in my face because his posture softened a little. His hand hovered near my shoulder like he wanted to touch me, then tucked back into his lap. I know this is frightening, he said quietly. I'm sorry you weren't warned about the lake. You should have been. That's on Rheinkorb and the county, not on you. But we can handle this. I've handled it before. That last part landed in a strange way. Before. How many befores? Okay, I said, because confessing that there was something alive wrapped around my veins had sucked the other responses right out of me. So what do I do? First, he said, shifting back into a more clinical tone, there are rules. They aren't negotiable. You break them, you make this much more dangerous. For you and for others. The word others made my stomach flip. He held up one finger. One. From this moment on, no showers, no baths, no swimming, no saunas. No body of water bigger than a puddle. You can wash with a damn cloth, but that's it. I blinked. I can't shower. You can sponge bathe, he said. The cord is highly reactive to large amounts of water. It recognizes that as its exit environment. Triggering it too early or in an uncontrolled setting is risky. Risky like you bleeding out on your bathroom floor, he said, blunt enough that I flinched. Or like it transferring to someone else unprepared. I swallowed hard. Two, he continued, pack a bathing suit and a towel in your car. Keep them with you at all times. Don't leave town, don't make any long drives. I'm gonna feel like swimming when there's a thing in my leg that came from water. My voice pitched high on the last word. "You're going to feel like you do anything to get into water," he said. "Incubation ends with a kind of compulsion. The organism stimulates the nervous system to make the host seek out bodies of water. When you feel that urge, when it's not just I'm sweaty and a shower would be nice, but a real, overwhelming, almost unbearable need, you call me." Immediately, he met my eyes, holding my gaze until I had to look away, then back. "I don't care if it's 3 in the morning. I don't care what I'm doing. You call. You get in your car. You come straight here. You do not stop for anything." I tried to swallow, but my mouth had gone dry. "And 3, he said, "you don't tell anyone." That one surprised me. "Not even like my parents?" I asked, even though my parents lived 3 states away and we only talked once every couple of weeks. "My friends. Not unless they absolutely have to know," he said. "This isn't about shame. It's about panic. People here parasite from contaminated water, and suddenly you've got rumors flying, news stations calling, lawsuits forming, RheinCorp lawyers crawling all over everything. It complicates the protocols, and complications make this less safe for you. So I'm supposed to just what? Pretend I'm fine. You're supposed to be careful," he said. "Beyond that, live as normally as you can. Stress isn't good for your immune system." The absurdity of worrying about my immune system when there was a literal alien life form wrapped around my veins almost made me laugh again. Almost. "What about medicine?" I asked finally. "Pills, creams, whatever?" He shook his head. "Topicals won't reach it. Systemic antiparasitics might disrupt it in ways we can't predict. The safest option is to let it complete its cycle and then remove it from the environment. Once it exits your body, it's fragile. That's where we intervene. Remove it from the environment." I repeated. "You mean kill it?" "Yes," he said. "Exactly that." A beat of silence stretched between us. The thing in my leg seemed suddenly very present, like it understood we were talking about its death. "Are there a lot of these?" I asked quietly. "From that lake, I mean." He looked at the scanner on the counter, then back at me. "Enough that I have a device specifically calibrated to detect them," he said. So yeah, that was a yes. He printed out a sheet of instructions. My name at the top, the clinic's emergency number highlighted in yellow. The words barely registered as I stared at them. "No water. Pack a suit. Come in when the urge hits." I left with my jeans cutting into the swelling, pamphlet about aquatic parasites, and you folded in my pocket like some fucked up brochure. At home, my shower stood there behind the curtain like a taunt. My hair already felt greasy from the summer air, sweat sticking to the back of my neck. I never wanted hot water more than I did when I knew I couldn't have it. I filled a bowl at the sink instead with a washcloth and tried to wipe myself down like I was in some old movie set in the 1800s. It didn't work. I felt filthy and exposed, like the parasite had made the rest of my body its domain too. I stripped down and stood in front of my bedroom mirror. The red swelling on my thigh looked even bigger somehow under my own lighting. The skin around it seemed stretched to its limit, shiny like overinflated latex. I could see faint tracings of veins feeding into it, a network of bluish lines. "Okay," I told my reflection. "You just have to wait. A few days, a week, whatever. Then it comes out, they kill it, you get stitched up, and it's just trauma. Trauma is survivable." The thing inside me shifted, like it was turning over in its sleep. I flinched and grabbed the dresser to steady myself. That night, I dreamed about water. Not just the lake. Oceans, bathtubs, rainstorms. Me standing fully clothed under a waterfall, open-mouthed, drinking so much water my stomach swelled and never hurt, never burst. I woke up with my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth and my thigh throbbing with heat. Days blurred. I tried to go to work because pretending everything was normal felt safer than sitting alone at home thinking. The Corrid, as Dr. Rodney had named it, had no respect for my attempts. It moved when it wanted, in meetings, in the bathroom stall, in line at the coffee shop. Sometimes it did this slow, deliberate crawl that made my toes tingle and my hip ache. Other times it twitched quick and sharp like a muscle spasm. Coworkers asked if I was okay. I got good at lying. Fine. Just tired. Fine. Heat's killing me. Fine. Just need coffee. The urge to talk about it pulsed under all of that. I want to text my best friend, dump it all out in one long rant. Hey, LOL BTW, there's a fucking creature in my leg. How's your day going? I typed the start of the message 3 times and deleted it. At night, the temptation to shower got worse. I didn't realize how much of my mental stability hinged on hot water until it was gone. Using a damp washcloth felt like punishment. My skin never felt clean. I caught myself touching the shower knob more than once, fingers hovering over the handle like a junkie looking at a full syringe. No water, I heard his voice in my head. No water bigger than a puddle. On the 3rd day, I caved enough to fill the sink halfway and dunk my hair in it. I leaned over the porcelain basin, eyes shut, letting water soak my scalp. I tried to keep my thigh angled back, away from the sink like that mattered. The cord reacted. In my thigh, something tightened. Not pain exactly, more like someone had pulled a string attached to the inside of my leg. For a second, I felt a strange tug in my lower abdomen too, like the thing had more reach than I realized. It made me jerk back, dripping, heart pounding. Okay, I whispered, water running down my nose. Okay, fuck. I was apologizing to it now. Great. I toweled off carefully, avoiding any contact with the swollen area. It looked worse that night. Bigger, maybe. The darker core more pronounced, like there was a length of something coiled in there waiting to unfurl. On Sunday, my phone rang. Caller ID, Rodney, clinic. My stomach dropped. Hello. Riley, it's Dr. Rodney. Just checking in. His voice was mild enough, but there was an undercurrent, a tension. It's still there, I said stupidly. Bigger. Moving more. Any pain? Numbness? Changes in color of the skin around it? No, just gross. Any water exposure? Sink, I admitted. For my hair. I kept my leg away, but it felt something, I think. It tightened. Don't do that again, he said, not unkindly, but firm. We're close. Close to what? I asked, even though I knew. To emergence. The words sat in my ear, like a cold plug. That will come with a strong urge to immerse yourself in water, he said. Stronger than simple discomfort. You'll know. When you feel it, you call me. You come in. Don't try to fight the urge alone. That's when people make mistakes. People, I repeated. How many people exactly? A pause. Enough that we have a protocol. Focus on your own case right now. He hung up soon after. I sat there on my bed, phone pressed to my thigh like maybe it could pick up the beating under my skin. That night, the dreams got worse. I was back at the lake, but it was bigger now. The trees around it were gone, replaced by rusted metal fences and warning signs in languages I didn't recognize. The water glowed faintly from within, this sickly blue-white light that made everything sharp-edged. I walked into it anyway. I couldn't stop. Every step I took, the ground sucked to my feet like wet sand, trying to hold me. Voices spoke from under the surface. I couldn't make out words, just the cadence of pleading. Hundreds of people whispering at once. Come in, come in, come in. I woke up gasping, my legs tangled in the sheets. My thigh burned. I pressed my hand against the swelling, feeling it jump under my palm. Stop, I whispered. Just stop. Do whatever you have to do, and then get the fuck out. Maybe it heard. Maybe it didn't. Monday afternoon, the urge hit. It didn't start as a thunderclap. It came in like a tide. I was at my desk, trying to focus on an email chain I'd already read 3 times. My thigh had that now familiar heat, the occasional twitch. My mouth felt dry, so I reached for my water bottle, drank, went back to work. Then there was this thought, quiet at first. Water would feel good. I ignored it, typed a sentence, deleted it, rewrote it. You should go home and take a bath. Except I couldn't. I knew that. The awareness of not being allowed to do that made the thought louder. You need water. My leg pulsed. You need water. I shifted in my chair. My jeans rubbed against the swelling, and something inside pressed outward in response, a push that felt almost impatient. You could just stand under the shower for a second. Just 1 second. Just enough to. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and hit the cubicle wall. "You okay?" My co-worker, Jenna, asked from the next desk over. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded thin. I need to go. Stomach thing. I grabbed my bag. My hand shook as I logged off. I could feel sweat gathering at the back of my neck under my arms. The office air felt suddenly too dry, like it was stealing moisture from me. By the time I hit the parking lot, the urge was a steady drumbeat. Water. Not just want. Need. The same way you need to breathe when you hold your breath too long. My muscles felt keyed up, restless. My skin prickled with phantom sensations, like drops were already rolling down it. I fumbled my keys, almost dropping them, and yanked my car door open. The sun baked the interior like an oven, air shimmering. I didn't care. I shoved the key in the ignition with hands that didn't feel like my own and started the engine. "Call Rodney," I said out loud, because hearing the words made them more solid. I put the car in drive. I backed out. I got to the end of the row. To my left, beyond the office buildings and the low wall, I could see the glint of the decorative fountain in front of the main entrance. 3 tiers of cement bowls, water cascading down, catching the light. My mouth flooded with saliva. Pull over, pull over, pull over. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The urge to turn into that lane instead of heading for the road was almost physical. My left foot twitched toward the brake on its own. Water. Just a second. Just your hands. Just your feet. Just. I slammed my head back against the seat rest, hard enough to make my vision blur for a second. "Call Rodney," I repeated through clenched teeth. Now. Now. I hit the voice dial. By the time I pulled into the street, his receptionist had picked up. "This is Riley," I said. He told me to call when there's an urge. I need water. I feel like I'm gonna crawl out of my skin if I don't get into water right now. "One moment," she said, her tone changing instantly. There was a click, then his voice. "Riley, where are you?" "In my car," I said, leaving work. I almost drove into a fountain like a crazy person. "I'm trying to get to you." "Good," he said. "You're doing the right thing. Come straight here. Don't stop anywhere. Don't go home. Do you have your bathing suit?" "Yes." "Put on before you get here," he said. "You won't wait once you arrive." The thought of pulling over somewhere public and stripping down felt absurd. The thought of trying to wriggle into a bikini in the clinic bathroom while every cell in my body screamed for water felt worse. "Okay," I said, already scanning ahead for some empty side street. And Riley, "Yeah. Don't touch any fountains," he said. "No sinux. No puertas. No nothing. This is the most dangerous part." He hung up. I pulled into a side street 3 blocks from the clinic, lined with half-renovated houses and a couple of overgrown yards. My hand shook so badly it took me 3 tries to get the car in a park. The urge was a constant roar in my head now. Not even words, just need. My heart hammered. My thigh burned so hot it felt like it might blister. Every movement made the thing inside me surge and twist like it was trying to orient itself. I dug the crumpled bikini out of the grocery bag in my back seat, stripped in the driver's seat as fast as I could. Shirt off, bra off, shorts around my ankles, underwear kicked aside. I nearly ripped the strings on the bikini bottoms, yanking them up. Cars drove by. I saw at least one guy glance over, eyes widening. I didn't care. By the time I pulled into the clinic parking lot, my body felt like it was vibrating. I had this animal sense that I was close to water. I could smell it like ozone and rain, even though there was nothing but asphalt and hot air. There's a small stone fountain in front of the clinic. I never really noticed it before. A little birdbath type thing, water bubbling up in the center and trickling down the sides into a shallow pool. It might as well have been the Pacific Ocean. My chest squeezed. For a heartbeat, I could see myself clearly, climbing in, kneeling down, dunking my whole head under that algae-slick trickle like some desperate lunatic. A nurse in scrubs stood just inside the glass doors, watching me like a hawk. As soon as I was within 10 feet of the fountain, she flung the door open. "Riley," she called sharply. "Inside. Now." Her voice cut through the urge long enough for my feet to choose the door over the water. The AC hit me like a wall. My skin broke out in goosebumps for a new reason. The lobby smelled like antiseptic and copier toner. I was wearing nothing but a swimsuit and flip-flops. People in the waiting room stared. A toddler pointed at me, his mother pulling his hand down gently. "Ms. Hale," another nurse asked from behind the desk. She didn't wait for my answer. "Right this way." Dr. Rodney was already in the hall, lab coat open, stethoscope hanging forgotten around his neck. His expression was a tight coil of focus. "This way, Riley," he said, taking the lead. He hustled me through a door marked staff only and down a short corridor. My leg throbbed in time with my heartbeat. Each step made the thing inside me feel heavier, like it was sliding downward, seeking gravity. The room he led me into wasn't an exam room like the others. It was bigger, all white tile, no windows. In the center of the floor, on a slight raised platform with a drain built into its base, was a large metal tub. It looked industrial, like something you'd see in an old asylum movie, not a modern clinic. It was already filled with water. Clear, still, reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. The sight of it short-circuited my brain. Every nerve screamed, "Get in." "Go ahead," he said. "Climb in." He didn't have to tell me twice. I moved like my body was on puppet strings, crossing the tile too fast, almost slipping. I climbed over the side of the tub and lowered myself in. The water was cool, not freezing but cooler than the air. It hit my skin like relief, so intense it was almost painful. My muscles unclenched one by one. The burning in my thigh spread out, diffusing, no longer a single point, but a warm flow. I sank down until the water reached my chest, my hands gripping the sides. The moment my left thigh fully submerged, the cord reacted. It was like feeling a snake wake up around my bones. It tightened, then loosened in a sliding, rippling motion, moving faster than it ever had. I could feel it uncoiling from whatever was wrapped around, section by section. My breath hitched. "What do I started, looking up at Rodney. The door slammed. I jerked and stared. There was a thick metal latch on the outside of the door, and I heard it slide into place. A softer clunk followed, something mechanical engaging. "Hello," I called, the word thin in the echoing room. A small metal flap at eye level in the door slid up with a scrape. Behind it, I saw his face. Not cheerful, not even kind, just determined. "I'm sorry, Riley," he said. His voice was muffled through the door. "There are certain liabilities that prevent me from being in the room with you during emergence. Contamination risks and other dangers. But I'm right here. I can see you. I'll walk you through everything." I stared at him, then at the latch, then at the tub, then back at him. "You locked me in," I said. "I contained you," he corrected. "It's for everyone's safety, including yours. If something goes wrong, you're out there and I'm in here." I snapped, panic threading my words. "How is that supposed to be safer for me?" "The organism emits a powerful anesthetic when it exits," he said, ignoring the anger. "You won't feel what it's doing as it goes. That's good. It minimizes trauma. But it also means you might not be fully aware of your surroundings. People panic. They thrash. They run. We learned the hard way that the safest procedure is isolation. I repeated. "Define we." "Medical staff," he said. "I'll explain more later. Right now, you need to focus. Keep your thigh fully submerged. Don't disturb the cord. Don't try to pull it. Don't touch it at all until it's completely out of your body. Can you do that?" Another roll of movement pulsed through my leg. My fingers dug into the metal lip of the tub. "I don't know," I whispered. "Yes, you do," he said. "You've done everything right so far. You got yourself here. You didn't give in to the fountain. You can do this part too." Something in his tone, The certainty maybe anchored me. I dragged in a deep breath, tried to steady myself. The air smelled like bleach and something faintly metallic. "Okay," I said. "Tell me when's going to happen." "It's happening now," he said. The water around my thigh was warmer than the rest, a little cloud of heat. I could feel the cord moving in tight spirals under my skin, like it was looking for an exit. Every time it pressed outward, the skin stretched and shone. I braced for pain. That didn't come. Instead, there was this numbness. It started at the center of the swelling and spread outward, radiating down toward my knee and up toward my hip. At first, I thought it was panic, that faint floaty feeling you get when you stand up too fast, but localized quickly. "This is the anesthetic," he said, like he could read my mind. "It's releasing it as it severs itself from your tissues. You might feel pressure and movement, but no sharp pain. That's normal. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." I wanted to slam my fist into the door and tell him that normal people do not sit in industrial bathtubs and birth parasites out of their own flesh. But my hands felt heavy now, my arms floating just under the surface of the water like they belonged to someone else. A tight, sharp pressure bloomed at the apex of the swelling. Not pain, more like someone pressing a thumb hard into a bruise. I looked down. The skin at the very center of the red disc had gone from taut to almost translucent. I could see the shadow of the thing more clearly there, a darker, not right under the surface. I think I started, and then the skin bulged upward. For a second, it held. Then it split. The sound was obscenely soft. A little wet pop. A thin line opened, and a starburst of bright red blood shot out into the clear water, unfurling like a ribbon. My stomach lurched. I gripped the sides of the tub harder, knuckles barely visible through the numbed haze. "You're doing great," Rodney said from the door. "Keep breathing. Remember, don't touch it." Something black pressed through the tiny opening. At first I thought I was seeing a vein, or maybe some kind of clot, but it moved with terrible deliberation, testing the air or the water as it emerged. A thin, slick appendage uncurled itself into the water. It was about the thickness of a pencil at first, tapering to a looser, frayed end. No, not frayed, ciliated. Tiny hair-like structures along its length rippled, catching the light. It wriggled. My throat clenched, but I couldn't feel my leg well enough to jerk away. The anesthetic had spread up to my hip now, down to mid-calf. That part of my body felt like it belonged to a mannequin. The black appendage, tentacle, limb, extended further, followed by more. The wound widened gradually, no tearing, just a slow gape as whatever was inside insisted on more space. I watched, horror pinning my eyes open, as the main body of the cord slid into view. It was long, much longer than I'd allowed myself to imagine. Flattish, like someone had taken an eel and compressed it. Its surface was an awful glossy black shot through with thin veins of a poisonous-looking green, pulsing in slow waves. It undulated as it came out, folding on itself like a ribbon in the current. Each flex of its body made more of it emerge from my thigh. It was like watching a magician pull a scarf from a sleeve, except the sleeve was my flesh. "Numbness okay?" Rodney's voice came through, distant and tinny. "Uh-huh," I said, because forming words felt like remembering how to use my tongue. The cord kept coming. A foot, maybe more. It coiled lazily in the tub near my knee, looping over itself, body sticking slightly to the metal when it brushed against it. My mind couldn't reconcile its length with the space in my leg. How had that entire thing been inside me? Where had it wrapped itself? What else in there had it touched? It released more blood in little pulses as it moved. The clear water clouded pink, then redder. Tiny strands of tissue trailed from the wound, floating like pale seaweed. I couldn't feel any of it. My brain registered the visuals, but my body refused to supply sensation. "You're okay," Rodney said. "Just a little more." He was wrong, or lying, because at some point, this thin, slick horror emerging from my body across a line in my psyche. The rational parts of my brain that had gamely accepted parasite as an abstract term shorted out. My heart started thudding faster, panic trying to claw its way up my numb spine. By the time the last section of the cord slid free from the wound, a bulbous, slightly thicker segment scarred with what looked like suction grooves. It had to be close to 2 feet long, maybe more. It uncoiled fully in the water and began to drift, its slow movements creating lazy currents in the blood-tinged bath. For a half second, it seemed content to just be. It folded over itself once, twice, like a resting snake. Then it turned. I don't mean it rotated randomly. I don't mean the water made it tumble. I mean the front of it oriented itself toward me, toward my face. There was a mouth. I hadn't seen it at first. It was a circular opening ringed by jagged, translucent hooks that reminded me of tiny broken glass teeth. It opened and closed once, bubbles escaping. The inside was a sick, pale gray. Every hair on my arm stood up. Something snapped in me. All the instructions, don't touch it, don't disturb it, stay still, evaporated under one screaming directive. Get away from you. I moved before I could think. My right hand shot down into the water, fingers closing around the slick middle of its body. It was hotter than the water, and the surface was coated in something viscous that made my grip slippery. The cord convulsed the second my skin contacted it. Its body went rigid in a way that felt wrong, like electricity had surged through it. The mouth opened wide. "Riley, don't!" Rodney's voice snapped from the door. I didn't hear the rest. I'd already lifted the thing, intending to fling it out of the tub, get it anywhere but near the open wound it had left, anywhere but near me. It didn't like that. The head whipped back toward my arm with terrifying speed. Before I could react, the ring of hooks latched onto the inside of my forearm, just below the elbow. The pain cut through the anesthetic like it had never existed. White-hot fire lanced up my arm, into my shoulder, down my fingers. I screamed. The sound bounced off the tile and came back at me louder. The hooks sank into my flesh. It wasn't a clean puncture. It was a tearing, grinding bite. I could feel the individual prongs catching on skin, sliding through muscle. Something oozed into the wounds, cold and burning at the same time. "Get off! Get it off!" I shrieked, shaking my arm instinctively. My thrashing accomplished something. The motion and the water combined to dislodge its grip just enough that, in a burst of terrified strength, I managed to hurl it out of the tub. It flew, a slick black mass trailing blood and greenish fluid, and hit the tile with a wet smack. The momentum tore it from my arm. Flesh ripped, blood sprayed. I clutched my forearm to my chest, choking on sobs I barely recognized as mine. The pain in my thigh arrived late, like a wave catching up to the storm. The anesthetic had either worn off or been overridden. The wound where it had exited, now a ragged, gaping hole, screamed with raw agony. I tried to climb out of the tub, slippery metal and my own blood making it clumsy. My knee banged against the side, sending another shock of hurt up my leg. "Let me out!" I shouted at the door, voice hoarse and cracking. "Open the fucking door!" "Riley, listen to me." Rodney's voice came, still maddeningly calm. "Is it still alive?" I turned. The cord lay on the tile. For a heartbeat, it looked like just a lump of meat. Slumped, still, slick with blood and whatever that faintly glowing green fluid was. Then it moved. Not the slow, lazy undulations from before. This was restructuring. The long, flat body folded on itself, thicker segments contracting, thinner ones extending. The middle of it bloated slightly, then split, for black appendages pushed out from its underside, too near the front, too near the back. They weren't tentacles like the first limb that had emerged from my leg. These had more structure, rudimentary joints, limbs. The back two planted themselves on the tile, lifting the thing's main body off the floor in a shuddering push. The front pair flailed in the air at first, then found purchase hooking tiny clawed tips into the microscopic irregularities of the tile. It stood up. It wasn't high off the ground, maybe 6 inches at the top of its arched body. But that was enough to make it look horrifyingly intentional. The mouth at the front opened and closed, teeth clicking wetly together. It hissed. I hadn't known it could make sound, but there was this soft, disgusting exhalation that made my skin crawl. It didn't rush me. It didn't need to. It just faced me, a low, pulsing threat. I backed against the far side of the tub, water sloshing. My wounded arm throbbed. Blood ran down my fingers, pinking the water around me. The wound in my thigh leaked steadily, hot streams mixing with the cool bath. I felt dizzy. The cord has a secondary terrestrial form, Rodney said. I told you there were other dangers, but it's disoriented right now. There's a bat on the table to your left. Can you see it? I dragged my eyes away from the creature long enough to scan the room. There, on a stainless steel table against the wall, about 6 feet from the tub, sat a wooden baseball bat. Clean, unremarkable. Too far. I can't reach it from here, I said, voice thin. You'll have to get out of the tub, he said. You need to kill it, Riley. Quickly, before it regains full coordination. I thought you were going to kill it. I snapped, hysteria bubbling under the words. I thought that was your job. You disturbed it, he said, guilt flickering just barely under his clinical tone. Its bite complicates things. It may have introduced additional compounds into your system. We'll handle that. But right now, we cannot let it live. If it escapes that room, if it finds another host. His voice faltered for the first time. Not much, but enough. I looked at the thing again. It hadn't moved closer yet. Its back limbs were planted firmly, anchoring it. The front ones flexed and curled in the air like they were tasting invisible currents. The mouth twitched, teeth clacking softly. It was waiting for me. Of course it was. It knew I'd have to get out of the tub if I wanted to leave, and it was between me and the door. Between me and the bat. My legs felt weak. Blood loss? Panic? Both. Riley, Rodney said, voice sharper now. Listen to me. You can do this. You need to. Get out of the tub. Move slowly. Don't let it latch onto anything important. If it gets on your torso, your neck. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Fuck, I whispered. I forced myself to move. My hands shook as I grabbed the sides of the tub. The metal was slick with splashes of blood and water. I pulled my right leg up first, over the edge, planting my foot on the tile. My wounded left leg followed, dragging a trail of pink water down the side. Standing hurt. The wound in my thigh gaped with the change in position, sending a fresh wave of hot blood sliding down to my knee. The world tilted briefly. I caught myself on the tub, vision tunneling. The cord hissed again. A high, wet sound. Up close, I could see that the greenish veins along its body were pulsing faster now. Recovering. It shifted its weight slightly, testing its limbs. One front appendage tapped the tile, then the other. Go, Rodney said. Now. I limped toward the table. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. My thigh screamed. My calf throbbed where numbness had turned to raw ache. My bitten forearm sent streaks of pain up to my shoulder with each heartbeat. The cord held its ground. It twisted its head, which I still hated acknowledging it had, following my movement. For a second, I thought maybe it wouldn't pounce. Maybe it was more scared of me than I was of it. Then I heard the sound. Not a hiss, not a click, a scrape. The front limbs shot forward, digging into the tile, and then it lunged. It moved so much faster than I was prepared for. One moment, it was 6 feet away. The next, it was on me, slamming into my right calf with enough force to nearly buckle my knee. Pain shot up my leg as its mouth latched onto the muscle on the outside of my calf. The teeth dug in, hooks catching flesh and pulling. I screamed, a raw animal sound. I kicked instinctively, trying to shake it off. Its back limbs dug in, claws scraping the tile, using my own movement to climb higher. It slithered along my leg like a goddamn demon sock. I grabbed for it with my free hand, fingers closing around its slick body again. It writhed, muscles contracting in a wave that made my grip slip. "Hit it!" Rodney yelled. "Riley, the bat." The bat. I staggered forward, dragging the creature with me, leaving a smear of blood on the floor. The table blurred in my vision, edges doubling. I reached out, fingers brushing wood, then wrapping around it. The sudden weight in my hand felt both foreign and solid, real in a way nothing else in this nightmare did. The cord tightened its grip on my calf. I could feel the hooks carving deeper, scraping bone. Something warm and viscous, its saliva, its secretions poured into the wounds. My foot started to tingle, then go numb. I didn't think. I just swung. The bat came down on my own leg as much as on the creature. The impact sent a shock up my arms, rattling my teeth. My calf exploded with pain that nearly dropped me. But the cord shrieked. I hadn't known it could make such a sound. It was high and keening like metal scraping bone, layered with something almost human, a weird, breathy undertone. Its body spasmed. The claws in my skin loosened slightly. I staggered back, raising the bat again. The room tilted alarmingly. Blood loss had gone from might be a problem later to problem now. I brought the bat down again. This time I focused as much as I could on the sleek bulk of the thing. The wood connected with a sickening crunch. I felt something give, internal structure collapsing. The shriek went ragged. Greenish fluid sprayed from the crushed section, splattering across my foot, the tile, the base of the tub. Where it hit my skin, it burned cold, tingling. The cord tried to retreat, but its back limbs slipped in the mess. It lost purchase, sliding down my leg in a smear of its own fluids and my blood. I staggered sideways, following it bat raised. It lay half-curled now, body twitching, mouth opening and closing in frantic little snaps. I didn't feel victorious. I felt sick. "Finish it," Rodney shouted. "Riley, you have to finish it." Something in his tone, the urgency, the fear, cut through the fog. I screamed, more in effort than rage this time, and brought the bat down with everything I had left. The blow landed squarely on what I guessed was the head. There was a crunch, a wet pop, and then the bat hit tile. The sensation vibrated up my arms and lodged in my shoulder sockets. The cord stopped moving. No twitching, no hissing, no breathing, if it ever really breathed. Greenish goo spread in a viscous halo around its crushed body. Tiny bubbles formed and popped along its surface. The veins pulsing along its length faded, color leaching. I stood there, swaying, bat still held in a white-knuckled grip. My own blood dripped steadily from my arm and leg, mixing with the creature's fluids on the tile. The water in the tub behind me was a cloudy pink soup. The room seemed to expand and contract with each breath. "That's enough," Rodney said, voice closer now. I blinked. He was in the room. The door was open. I hadn't heard the latch. He wore a clear plastic face shield now, gloves that went up to his elbows, a disposable gown over his coat. He crossed the tile in 3 strides and eased the bat from my grip. "You did well," he said seriously. "No es mal, no patronizing pat." Just a statement. I started, and then my knees gave. He caught my shoulder with one hand, sliding his other arm around my waist to keep me from crashing straight into the puddle of cord remains. "Easy," he said. "I've got you." There was something almost fatherly in the way he guided me to a cleaner patch of floor and eased me down to sit. My back hit the cool tile of the wall. It felt good. Everything else felt like static. The room smelled thickly metallic now, undercut with an acrid, chemical stink coming off the dead parasite. I stared at it. Even crushed, it didn't look truly dead. The unnatural color of it, the faint sheen, my brain refused to register it as just meat. It looked like it might reassemble itself any second. He must have seen my fixation. He stepped into my line of sight deliberately, blocking it. "Look at me, Riley," he said. I did. His eyes were tired. I hadn't noticed that before under the jolly act, but they had that sunken, shadowed quality of someone who's seen too much and slept too little. "I'm going to stop the bleeding," he said. You've lost a lot of blood. You might feel lightheaded. I need you to stay with me. No passing out yet, okay? Okay, I whispered, though the edges of my vision were already going gray. He worked quickly, his movements efficient. Tourniquet above the bite on my arm. Pressure on my calf. Gauze packing stuffed, not gently, but necessarily, into the wound on my thigh. I hissed through my teeth, grabbing the tile with my free hand. What was that bite? I managed between clenched jaws. You said additional compounds. He glanced up at my face, then back down to the wound. We'll run tests, he said. We'll monitor. Cords sometimes try to propagate further. Their bite can introduce gametes or secondary organisms. It doesn't always take. Gametes. Secondary organisms. The word spun around in my head, unmoored. I can't do this again, I said, voice breaking. I can't. You won't, he said, firmly enough that I almost believed him. We caught this early. You reacted quickly. You killed it. That matters. Blood blossomed through the gauze. He added more, wrapping my thigh tightly in a thick dressing. You know how to stitch, I said, grasping at mundane details because the alternative was panicking until I passed out. 15 stitches, right? That's how this ends, yeah? He huffed a breath that was almost a laugh. Give or take, he said. Let's get you cleaned and stabilized first. He and the nurse, who had appeared at some point that I hadn't registered, similarly gowned and shielded, helped me onto a wheeled gurney, moving hurt in a distant, echoing way now. The adrenaline was starting to ebb, leaving a bone-deep ache. As they pushed me out of the tile room, I caught one last glimpse of the cord's remains. For a second, I could have sworn one of the crushed limbs twitched. Then the door swung shut, and I decided I was going to pretend I hadn't seen that. The stitches came later, under bright lights, with numbing agents that actually worked where they were supposed to. 15 on my thigh, 6 on my arm, 8 on my calf. Rodney counted them out loud as he worked, maybe for his own concentration, maybe to ground me. I watched the needle go in and out. My body felt like a stranger's. Most people don't look, he said at one point. Most people don't kill their own parasites with a baseball bat, I replied. My mouth felt thick. The sedative they'd given me tugged at the edges of my consciousness. He conceded that with a small tilt of his head. Fair point. When it was all done, bandages in place, for in my arm, slowly dripping clear fluid into my veins, machines beeping softly in the background, he sat in the chair next to my bed and rested his elbows on his knees. I'm sorry I had to surprise you, he said quietly. I didn't tell you about the terrestrial phase for a reason. People fixate on it. They panic too early. I panic plenty anyway, I said, staring at the ceiling. Yes, he said, but after the most dangerous part, not before. If I told you about the bat and the confinement, about what it looks like when it walks, some people don't come in. They think they can handle it themselves. They look for other options. They risk public water sources. I weigh the risk of your fear against the risk of more hosts. More hosts? Has that happened? I asked. People not coming in? He looked away. That's not something you need to carry, he said. You did what you needed to do. You came. You followed instructions. Mostly. You're alive. That's what matters. Mostly. I touched it, I whispered. Twice. And you're still alive, he repeated. We sat in silence for a bit. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and was picked up on the second ring. Why is there no information about cords online? I asked eventually. I looked. All I found were worm pictures from biology class nightmares. His jaw tightened. Because Reincourt paid a lot of money to make sure there isn't, he said. They call it controlling the narrative. They don't want words like contamination getting associated with their name in public forums. So cases are handled quietly. They fund clinics like this to develop protocols in exchange for non-disclosure agreements and ready access to data. Data? I repeated, my voice flat. You mean people like me? I mean parasites like that. He nodded toward the door. And the people they inhabit, yes. Gem Lake, I said. That's their fault. An industrial runoff accident. Several years ago, he said. Compounds they were testing for water treatment interacted with an existing microfauna in the lake. Chorids, whatever their original name was, are the result. They don't like that word, of course. Accident. They prefer unintended outcome with manageable parameters. Jesus, I muttered. How many people? Enough, he said softly. You're not the first. You won't be the last, unless someone finally shuts that place down or they invest in a real cleanup instead of slapping warning signs up and calling it a day. There were no signs, I said. My voice cracked with tired anger. I walked in like it was a fucking postcard. He winced. They were supposed to post new ones after the last heavy rain, he said. Runoff shifts. Parasite concentrations change. They delayed. Because signs look bad, I said. Makes the company look guilty. He didn't respond. You're part of it, I said, realization dawning through the sedative fog. You work with them. I work with people who get sick, he said. If refusing their money meant I couldn't afford the scanner that detected that thing in you before it reached your central nervous system, I'd take their blood money and sleep like a baby. Do you? I asked. Sleep like a baby? He smiled a little at that, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes I do, he said. Sometimes I don't. The sedatives dragged me harder. My eyelids felt thick. You'll be sore, he said, standing. You'll probably have some vivid dreams. That's the bite and the anesthetic compounds working their way out. Your immune system might go a little haywire. Fever, chills. We'll keep you overnight for observation. Tomorrow, if everything looks stable, you can go home. Home, I repeated. The word felt distant. And then what? Pretend none of this ever happened. You heal, he said. You follow up in a week. We monitor your blood. We make sure there's nothing else growing that shouldn't be. And then, yes, you try to live your life. I chewed on that as consciousness ebbed. Is it gone? I asked finally. Like gone? No pieces left in me. He hesitated just a second too long. We got the main body, he said. That's what matters most. We'll watch for signs of secondary implantation, but those are rare. Rarer than what? I wanted to ask, but the sedative finally dragged me under. When I dreamed, I was back in the lake. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Bodies floated beneath the surface. Dozens of them, hundreds, suspended like underwater marionettes. Their eyes were open, hair drifting. Their skin was marked by dark, circular scars, some fresh and bleeding, some old and puckered. Cords coiled around their limbs, their torsos, their necks. Some were still half in, half out of their hosts. Mouths latched onto pale flesh. They turned as one to look at me. Come back, they whispered. Not with mouths, with the spaces where their mouths should have been. I woke up in a dark hospital room, heart pounding, sheets tangled around my legs. My thigh burned. My arm throbbed. My calf ached. Every scar they'd left was real. Rodney discharged me the next afternoon. I walked or hobbled out of the clinic with bandages under my clothes and a bottle of painkillers in my bag. The sun felt wrong on my skin. Too bright, too hot, too interested. At the door, he stopped me. Riley, he said, one more thing. I turned, gripping the strap of my bag to keep my hand from shaking. You might still feel echoes, he said. Urges, sensations of movement, phantom pains. Your nervous system had something wrapped around it for days. It will take time to recalibrate. Echoes, I repeated. If you feel anything that seems more than that, he added, you call me. Immediately. Don't decide for yourself that it's nothing. Let me make that determination. How will I know the difference? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. You'll know, he said. You knew this time. Not exactly comforting. Okay, I said. Sure. He hesitated, then did something he hadn't done before. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder just once. You did well, he said again. Most people don't handle it as well as you did. I almost jumped into your fountain, I said. Almost, he replied. You didn't. That counts. Driving home, every puddle on the side of the road looked deeper than it was. The river under the bridge I crossed every day might as well have been an abyss. The water in the ditch, catching runoff from someone's sprinkler, made my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. I clenched the wheel and drove past each one, knuckles white. Back in my apartment, the shower loomed. I half expected to feel that compulsion again, the desperate need to stand under the spray until my skin wrinkled, to let water wash away everything that had happened. It was there, faintly like a habit more than a need. I turned my back on it and filled the bowl in the sink instead. The scars healed. The one on my thigh is the worst. A jagged, puckered circle where smooth skin used to be. If I press around it slowly, sometimes I can feel a faint ache deep in the muscle, like something remembering being displaced. The bite on my arm left a crescent of small, uneven scars, each one a tiny reminder of those translucent hooks. The one on my calf aches when it rains. Rodney saw me twice more for follow-ups. He took vials of my blood, ran scans with his weird magnifier that lit up my leg in ghostly blue on its screen. He pronounced me clear. No residual foreign tissue, no unexpected cell growth, no secondary organisms. "You're free," he said. It should have felt like the moment in a movie when the music swells and the protagonist walks out into the sunlight reborn. It didn't, because every so often at random times, waiting in line at the grocery store, lying in bed at night, sitting in traffic, I feel it. It's not as intense as that day in the office. It's not a compulsion so strong it hijacks my body, but it's more than a passing thought. I'll be sitting there and suddenly I'll think, a swim would fix everything. It's specific, that thought. Not a shower, not a bath, a swim. Full body, submerged, cool water, cradling every inch of me. And when that thought hits, my scars ache. The one on my thigh goes from a faint tightness to a deep, throbbing heat. The one on my arm tingles. The one on my calf pulses in time with my heartbeat. For a second or two, I could swear I feel something ghosting along the inside of my leg, a sensation like movement in a limb that's not there anymore. Phantom parasite, I call it. That's what I tell myself. I stay away from lakes now. Obviously, if I have to drive past the trailhead, I do it fast, eyes on the road, not the dirt lot. I haven't been near the old Rheinkorb site. I don't plan to be, but sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with my heart hammering and my mouth dry, the taste of lake water at the back of my throat. Sometimes when the air is heavy and the heat presses in and my skin feels too tight, I can almost smell that wet stone, that sap and leaf rot, and something else under it. Something metallic, something alive. And every once in a while, the urge rises in me, slow, insistent, familiar. Go back. Just one more swim. Just once.